welcome to a new episode of The Brand Called You. I am Arini and I'm with Ashutosh Garg, and today we are going to learn from some of his learnings over the years as an entrepreneur and a professional. Hello, sir. First, I'm going to ask you about the management style. I'm in a company which has very, very high growth, and how should I work on my management style to keep up with the growth?
So one of the things that a lot of startup entrepreneurs do is that they first start by saying, "I know everything. I am the boss. I am the founder, and therefore everybody has to listen to me." This, I think, is one of the most dangerous philosophies to have in your management style, because as your startup starts to grow, the first and most important thing is for you to develop a strong management team. Now, that strong management team does not mean that you hire 10 top
Right.
management people,
Right.
but you gradually keep adding on. So, your management style has to first become inclusive. You have to be able to start saying, I'm getting in a strong HR person, I'm getting in a strong marketing person. Let me start now trusting the competence of those individuals rather than constantly breathing down their neck to say, what have you done or what have you not done? So that management style must be inclusive. You must have a management style where you are able to delegate. You must be able to say, okay, I cannot handle everything on my own. Because if you keep on trying to handle everything on your own, they will not be able to your people will not be able to do what you expect them to do, and you will not be able to do what you should be doing, which is to lead. So have an inclusive management style, learn how to delegate, learn how to step back and allow people to function, and finally uh, have the ability to seek accountability from people. So every CEO or every founder or every startup entrepreneur does not have to say that I am accountable. Ultimately, to your stakeholders, your shareholders, you are accountable. But if you are supposed to be doing something in marketing, and if you've got a head of marketing, then you go to delegate to that individual and seek accountability from the individual. And if that individual does not perform, let the individual perish. So that is the way I think a good inclusive management style should evolve.
That's great. But we have also heard about leading by example, where we show how to actually do the work. So, what does this term "lead by example" mean, and where does it stop doing the work
Correct.
and
So,
delegating?
when I say when I say lead by example, or when others say lead by example, that does not mean that the entrepreneur has to be the best bookkeeper, has to be the best product specialist,
Right.
has to be the best technology person, has to be the best HR person. Lead by example means when you're talking about the culture of the company, a simple thing is if you're expecting people to come at 9 a.m. in the morning, you should be there at quarter to 9.
Okay.
Lead by example means if you are going to seek accountability, you are the person who should be accountable first to what is expected of you.
Right.
Lead by example also means that if you are going out into the marketplace, then you are the person who should be leading a discussion if you think that is your skill set. If you're a functional specialist, lead by example means I will be present along with my team in the event there is a challenge. And finally, lead by example means that every organization has good news and bad news. So you have to be able to tell all your people, give me the bad news first, because it's your job to be able to say, I will help to resolve the bad news. The good news belongs to the entire company, the bad news belongs to the entrepreneur.
Right. That's now another thing is we all talk about transparency. We want to be transparent and share information, but how much information sharing is enough, and how what information should you share?
So I would differentiate this into two different parts. One is transparency, and the other is need to know.
Right.
Right? When I say that a company or an individual has to be transparent, it means that if there is good news in the company, try and disseminate it to as many people as possible. If there is bad news in the company, try and talk about the bad news and get feedback from the company. If there are successes, if there are failures, you have some great wins, you have some great innovation, certainly talk about it, share it. Need to know means that very often, if you're, say, got a tough decision going on in your board meeting, then transparency does not mean that the person who is on the shop floor has to know about what is happening in the board.
Right.
So that's when, along with transparency, comes the need to know. So in a transparent organization, you have the whole organization have the ability to know what is going on. But yet there are a lot of confidential things that happen within an organization.
Right.
And that is where the need to know principle comes, that everyone does not need to know
Right.
what is happening in the entire organization because of confidentiality, because of protection of IPR, etc. etc.
Right. How important is it for growth? How important is it to give feedback and also to take?
Very critical. Very critical. And from an entrepreneur's perspective, the take is even more important.
Right.
I have worked in organizations with one individual who was a particularly difficult boss, who used to keep noting all the issues that he had with me in a little black book. And at the end of the year, when it was time for appraisal, he would pull out the little black book and say, see, in April you did this, in June you did this, in October you did this, in November. Therefore, I'm not going to give you a promotion. Now, that is something which is not a healthy practice.
Right.
So you need to be able to give feedback at the time when you think the feedback has to be given, so that corrective action can be taken immediately.
Right.
If you don't give feedback at that particular point of time, then too much time elapses, and that particular incident would be forgotten by the individual himself or herself. And when you suddenly pull it out 10 months later, it will be of no relevance. So you must give feedback as and when it is due to be given back. More important for an entrepreneur is to take feedback, because entrepreneurs genuinely believe that they know everything, or a lot of entrepreneurs do, and that they don't make mistakes so easily. So therefore, it becomes necessary for an entrepreneur to make sure that he or she receives feedback so that the entrepreneur can also take corrective action. And that is a much more difficult thing to understand rather than just keep giving feedback.
How must one give negative feedback? Because giving a negative feedback is a twin-edged sword. I mean, if you mess it up, then you might as well lose the employee.
So negative feedback that can lead to losing an employee should really be given over a period of time. And if you are not telling an employee that, this is your first warning, you're not doing the right thing, this is your second warning, if you do it again, there'll be a third warning, and I'll give you one last chance. The expectations from an employee must continuously be communicated to the employee. Instead of a situation where I keep telling an individual what a great person you are, you're doing a great job, you're doing a great job. Inside, I keep thinking that employee needs to be sacked. And after 5 or 6 months of continuously giving great feedback, then you come to me and say, sorry, Ashutosh, not working. Tomorrow morning, stop coming to work. That will be a reason for a huge shock to me, because I'll say, I was constantly being given great feedback. What has happened suddenly, overnight, that I'm now being sacked?
Right.
So any intelligent, any aware employee who's continuously getting negative feedback will generally walk away without the provocation of being told time to go.
Right. That's a great piece of advice. Now, while we're talking about giving good feedback and all, in a high growth company, sometimes it can get very, very tough. when the going gets tough, it's very important to keep your team motivated. How do you ensure that you keep your team motivated?
So it's that ancient phrase: when the going gets tough, the tough get going.
Right.
Right? Every organization has tough periods. Every organization. I can't think of a single organization that can turn around and say, I've never had a challenge or I've never had a situation where, we've not faced any problems. Problems are a part of doing business.
Right.
And therefore, it has to be taken in its stride
Right.
by the leader, who's the entrepreneur, as well as by the team.
Right.
If you have a team which says that I am going to be with you, Arjun, when everything is hunky dory, but the day you run into a problem, I'm going to walk away, then that's the wrong team you have. Right? So your team has to stand by you when you are facing problems, because they have seen good times as well. Yes, if as an entrepreneur, you have said when it's good times, everything comes to me.
Right.
When it's bad times, then we all have to share it.
Right.
Then again, it's a dysfunctional team. So it is a huge process of give and take, which is why a lot of HR people talk about the teams being like family members. And that family members really means that they're with you through problems and through successes. They're with you when you have to say something negative, but they're also there to say something negative to you. They hold you back, you hold them back. So it's a whole culture that gets built around
Right.
a startup.
Right. That's great. Now, as we are talking about growth, how should I plan my growth? Like, should I have bite-sized milestones, or should I just go for it at one stretch?
So there are two different steps that one can look at. One is, what is my vision for say 3 years? And I say that I'm starting today and I expect to be at 500x in 3 years' time. But in order to get to 500x, there are a lot of steps that I have to take in the next 3 years. So your 3-year vision could be 500 times what you are today. But to get there, you have to take steps, and those steps are what I call bite-sized milestones. What you want to do in the next 1 week, while keeping your eye on 3 years later, is what is more important than to just keep saying, I'm going to be there 3 years from now. Now let the organization take the ball and run.
Right.
So you got to take the ball and run, but at every stage, for every function within the organization, for every individual within the organization within that function, there have to be clearly defined points, milestones. And I also often say that each of these clear definitions must be specific and measurable.
Right.
So if someone says that I'm going to get to my 500x, which is say 150 weeks, right? I'm going to do 3 to 3.5x increment every week. Right? So every week I must then have that milestone in front of me to say, have I achieved it or not? And that is what is going to define whether you can get to your ultimate 3-year vision.
Right. First of all, how important is time management for an entrepreneur? I mean, and how must an entrepreneur approach it?
So, my own thinking on time management for an entrepreneur is that an entrepreneur works 24/7. Therefore, there is really no concept of
Yes.
how much time am I going to give to my business. But within those 24 hours, you need to be able to give time to your family. Have a little time so that you don't completely burn out. You need time to be able to get rest.
Right.
And in the 16, 17 hours that you're going to be working at work, you also need to be able to prioritize what do you want to do with every function. So you cannot, if you're a tech entrepreneur and tech is your passion, you cannot say that out of my 16, 17 hours of work a day, I'll give 15 and a half to tech And oh yeah, there is marketing and there is HR and there is finance and there is this. I'll give all of you 5 minutes each. Right. So I think that is the balance that you need to be able to think about when you are managing
Right.
or a fast growing company.
Right.
Right? At the same time, there is a lot of customer feedback that is coming back.
Right.
Because you're interacting with people. So your time management has to bring in a prioritization of everything that you think is critical,
Correct.
and each one of those has to find time
Right.
within your working day.
In fact, I was doing a time management sheet for myself. I realized that I sleep for 6 hours a day, so I definitely don't have 24 hours. I only have 18 hours
I
a day.
agree. I agree.
And out of those 18 hours, I realized that eight good hours go into people interaction, like either with employees or with clients or with partners or whatever. And then I'm just left with 10 maximum of 9 hours for actually doing the work that I'm doing. But then those 9 hours also are actually divided between some family time, some cooking time, some me time, some exercise and all. So essentially I'm just left with 4 hours to do the actual work. So do you think it is a realistic thing, or am I going wrong somewhere?
No, I don't think you're going wrong at all.
Yeah.
I think you have prioritized that you're going to give 9 hours to people, who are interacting with you, and I would call those people stakeholders.
Correct.
Right? They're stakeholders in everything that you want to do, and you must spend time, with family, with yourself for exercise. What is more important, the timesheet that you spoke about, is that at the end of a month, see if the way you have put down all your activities in that 1 month, is it achieving all your goals that you are setting out for yourself,
Right.
or are there some areas that are beginning to suffer?
Right.
If there are some areas that are beginning to suffer, when you do your next month's timesheet, plug in those things. Now, something else may have to take a back seat then.
Correct.
But if at the end of 1 month you find that this routine has met everything that you wanted to do, then just continue it again for the next month. Where people tend to lose out in time management is if they get into such routines that, oh, I have to do this because this is what I have decided. That is where problems start coming. I mean, I have worked for 4 decades. I've had a very, very busy schedule right through, and yet I always have time to meet everybody. Right? So I think time is also a state of mind. Right? There are people I meet who keep saying, I'm so busy, I don't have time at all. There are others who I meet who say, I've got all the time in the world, and I think they're busier than everyone else. So time management is entirely up to you.
Okay, so the other thing an entrepreneur must focus on, in my opinion, is cash management. The flow of money, and how must one approach that?
So as far as cash management is concerned, I think it's the most critical aspect of any business, because any business that is being built for profit has to deliver a profit. And in order for a business to be profitable, cash is the blood that flows through the veins of the business. So therefore, you need to keep on managing all that cash in a manner where you are never short of cash, and conversely, you must also not be sitting on so much cash that the people in the organization start to get spoiled, because by saying that, oh, I've got, we have a company that has so much cash, that a lot of bad practices start to set in. And you see this very often with very, very wealthy organizations, where they are just not able to manage the surplus cash that they have, as a result of which their employees start to go haywire. On the other hand, if you are in a business which is constantly tight for cash, then you are juggling all the time to say, what should I prioritize in terms of payments? And that prioritization then starts to create issues for employees, because sometimes their priorities are not met, and sometimes the business starts to suffer. So cash management is absolutely critical.
Now that we have talked about high growth, we have talked about time management and how to motivate the team. It is also important to bring in some fun while you are doing work. But then that is something that gets overlooked the most. And one of the reasons it gets overlooked is people just don't know how to have fun. So, what do you think an entrepreneur should do, whether with his family or the team, to bring in some fun element?
So, very interesting question. I've often said it's not just for entrepreneurs, and it's changing now, but I've often said that people in India do not know the meaning of leisure, right? Very, very few people can just say for the next 6 days, I'm going to take time off and do nothing. Right? There is a lot of guilt that, oh, yeah, if I'm seen as not doing anything, how am I going to be perceived? Right? So so leisure is a very important part of everyone's life, and I think today's millennials are driving that point home very strongly in their entire work environment. So fun has, to me, two different elements. One is the whole element of leisure, but more importantly, when I get up in the morning, is my waking reaction, oh, I'm really looking forward to going and getting to work and interacting with a lot of colleagues, or is my morning waking up reaction, oh God, another day, why do I have to do this? Or two very different reactions, but that really symbolize what is happening in the organization that I'm working in. If my reaction is the first, which is I'm really looking forward, it means I'm enjoying working with my colleagues. We take some time out. Fun can be, a 15-minute chat at the coffee machine. It can be to have a little get together in the evening, to cut a cake on someone's birthday. It can lead into, on a Friday evening, going out to a bar together, having a little party, celebrating little successes. So fun can be a whole lot of things. It does not necessarily mean taking all your employees onto a cruise, and when half the people are miserable and saying, oh God, why am I being taken there? And nobody's going to enjoy it.
Right. All right. So thank you so much. Hope you are having fun watching The Brand Called You. Please let us know what you feel in the comments below. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You podcast. Be sure to visit tbcy.in to join the conversation, access show notes, and discover fantastic bonus content. You can follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Simply search for The Brand Called You. Thank you and see you next week.